Andrea, Judd, Tierra, and others because I'm kind of a very high maintenance type of person. I'm also a 1760 reenactor. I demonstrate tomahawk throwing, I teach tomahawk throwing, and demonstrate how to shoot flintlock rifles. Usually when I address an audience anymore, it's in relation to tomahawk throwing. So I have a bunch of people that are getting ready to throw sharp objects in my direction. Hopefully that will not be the case today. However, if you're like everybody else, I'm not worried because the target is usually the safest place to be. The topics we plan to cover today are up on the screen. We're also recording this. I thought we were doing that to help me because the older I get, the harder it is to try to keep my lives straight. I'm told that we're doing it so that people that are unable to attend or today or join via the WebEx will have an opportunity to view this marvelous presentation. I'm going to try to be a little interactive. I'm going to try to have some fun, interactive. That means there's going to be times I will ask you questions and you will answer back. Do you understand that part? Yeah. Getting better. Okay. I find offering some sort of prize usually helps with the responses and the enthusiasm. When I was at OSU, I offered little Bucky bears. They're very expensive, so today you get Cheryl's foods. And that's only for the people that are in the room. Those joining via WebEx, this is the tough love part of our program. There is no prize for you for correct answers. So let's do some expectation settings. Today's objective is not to make you an expert on the changes that we are about to cover. Just like when I teach tomahawk throwing, I don't promise people that they're immediately going to step up and sink that tomahawk right into the target. Although I do take full credit when they do that. What I tell them is we'll work with them to help get their tomahawks in the target. I even define the target for them by stating it's not the ground, it's not the stand, it's not the tree, and most definitely it is not my back. So today marks the beginning of our working with you on these changes so that your proposals will do more than just hit the mark. What we're trying to do is help you by giving you a heads up on major changes so you know what to expect when you respond to our next RFPs. We're giving you an opportunity for a couple of weeks to look over the materials that we've prepared, so the RFP templates and the forms that will need to be filled out, so you have an opportunity to ask questions, that you can understand them. And we're going to provide you with contact information for experts who can not only answer your questions, but give you the correct answers. There will not be a test today. He's trying to contain your disappointment over that. But I promise you, there is going to be a test. That test is going to be when you start responding to our request for proposals. And we want you to be ready for it. We want you to be so ready for that test that you will be the equivalent of playing handles when we do tomahawk throwing. Handles means you stick a tomahawk in the target, and the next tomahawk you throw sticks in the handle. I don't like to play that game because every time we do that, it costs me $7 for every handle that gets through. So are you ready to start? There are no cookies for that answer. However, first cookie question of the day. What war were we fighting in the 1760s? And no, I was not there. See, we have a bunch of history buffs. It starts with French Revolution. Yes, yes, that is so wrong. Prior to the Revolution, French and Indian War, right there, Tierra, also known as the 7 Years' War to the rest of the world. As those in the consultant community know, communication is a very hard thing to do. No matter how carefully or precisely something is worded, there will be different interpretations. Communication is hard because you have to know your audience. For example, if I ask our refuse collectors or street repair people how much 2 + 2 is, they will immediately answer without hesitation for it. If I ask our PMs, our engineers, or our fiscal staff the same question, I get a lot of questions back about specs and contents. So I get to the point where I am sorry I asked. If I ask the consultant that same question, how much 2 plus 2 is, the answer is, we have any good consultants in the room? No good consultants in the room. Usually, from a good consultant, the answer would be, what do you want the answer? So I guess no cookies for that. Is anyone in here from senior management for consultants? Raise your hand. Oh, good. One opportunity. Tierra, guess who's going to get the cookie? Okay. If I ask senior management, how much is 2 plus 2? What is the answer? That's the good consultant, not the good manager. What I heard him say is, if I have to answer that question, what do I need you for? Sorry, Mandy, I skipped over you. So we know no matter how hard we try, people are going to leave this meeting with different interpretations of what we say. I also brought with me today a leather tomahawk. This is what we let the little kids throw, usually those 3 and under, and the adults who cannot control themselves on the range. Raise your hand if you think you could sink this tomahawk in a wooden target. I did not expect anyone to raise their hand. That's very good. Well, unexpected things happen. We actually had a little 3-year-old throw a leather tomahawk, stick it in the wooden target, because there happened to be a crack, and it wedged perfectly in the crack. I wish I had a picture of that. But as you can imagine, in our 1760s clothes, we don't carry around cameras. But unexpected things do happen. Like that tomahawk throw, that unexpected throw, we know there are going to be unexpected interpretations of the written materials that we supply to. Which brings us to questions. Because of the difficulty in communicating, I usually say I want you to ask questions as we go along. So we're going to start out that way today. We have a lot of material to cover. If we fall behind, we will ask the questions be held until the end. If you are a city employee in attendance or on the web, please hold your questions and see me after the meeting. And because communication is so very hard, I want to be very clear. I do not want questions from you city employees now. If you're in the room and not a city employee, then you'll raise your hand to ask a question. WebEx attendees can ask questions by using the WebEx Q&A feature to submit a question, or clicking the raise hand icon, and we'll unmute you so you can speak, or dialing *3 to ask a question if you're using a telephone. If we run out of time for questions today, or if you have additional questions later, or as you're reviewing the materials when we give you the website, you can submit questions on the address that we have on this slide. It should look familiar to you. It's the same address we use to accept questions to our RFPs. Just in case, I reserved the room for an extra hour afterwards so that anyone that's in attendance in the room that has questions, we can make sure they get answered. The answers will be posted on the same site, but I'm going to give you that we've posted the documents. I've heard a lot of concern and angst about the implementation of the WBE program. Concerns like if companies will respond to RFPs, if companies will be able to meet the goals, how will we award the contracts? I want to start by putting things into perspective. That's going to be by starting with the question. Somehow, with our good history to this point, I really don't expect it's going to get answered. Who was the first human to travel into outer space? That was, no, not the first, that's not the first human. I would even accept first nationality at this point. Yes. Russian. Oh, and he even knows the name, Yuri Gagarin. He traveled into space and orbited the Earth. And when interviewed about what he was thinking, he was up there in space looking at the Earth, he replied how fantastic the view was, how lucky he was to have been up there in space, seeing things no person had ever seen before. Tierra. And now we get John Glenn, which was my next question. Who was the first American to orbit the Earth? John Glenn, the Ohio native. When interviewed about what he was thinking, he replied that every part was supplied by the lowest bidder. Quite a different answer. So perspectives, but I'm going to let you in on a secret. Public service RFP awards have had a significant WBE spend for the past several years. You have been doing the MWBE program on a voluntary basis for several years in public service. What is happening now is we're moving from voluntary compliance to a more formalized requirement. You'll be doing pretty much the same thing. Just keep doing what you have been doing, and you will realize you do not have to worry about where the parts came from. You've already been positioned to enjoy it. With that having been stated, I actually feel my work here is done. This is the part where I would love to conclude the presentation and ask for questions. Based upon the so enthusiastic responses so far, I'm sure that would be okay with most of it. However, I suspect if I do that, it's what I get to retire a little earlier than what I had planned. So I'm going to give you a few more details. There will be a special provision document included as attachment A to RFPs with assigned goals. It'll detail changes to our base RFP document, and it covers what I'm going to be summarizing this part of the presentation, and it will also cover a few other topics. We did a special provision because we don't want to have multiple RFP formats floating around for city-funded projects. This way, the base RFP document will be the same for projects with and without MWBE goals. And we thought grouping the changes together would be easier on all of you, so you don't have to hunt through the base RFP document looking for every change related to the program. So consultants in the room, give me a thumbs up if you like the idea of everything grouped together as a special provision, or a thumbs down if you prefer it mixed with everything else. Not seeing any thumbs down, so it looks like we'll continue with that for a while. Speaking of thumbs up, that is also the secret to throwing tomahawks. You just want your thumb up the back of the handle like this. That helps to keep you from twisting your wrist, and twisting your wrist is bad when you throw a tomahawk. So that might be good information for you if you ever time travel back to the 1760s. Even better information if you do time travel back there. Do not throw away your weapon. The city's MBE program is in effect right now. RFPs we issue going forward will reflect the new requirements unless a waiver has been granted. This slide states the technical definition of the contracts that will fall under the program. To put it simply, we anticipate almost all of public service RFPs are going to fall under the program. You'll be able to identify those projects under the program that have an assigned goal in a few ways. One is the advertisement and vendor services and bonfire will say that there is a goal. And for public service RFPs, at the very bottom of the first page of our RFP document, it'll say what the assigned goal is. So if it happens to be one without a goal, it's going to say 0.00. Otherwise, if there's a percentage, it is covered under the program. As part of the evaluation process, the goal percentage will be finalized and will be written into the contract. There is one combined goal. There is not a goal for MBE and a goal for WBE. It's all combined into one. Now, I want you to keep in mind, this percentage is a minimum amount. Do not feel limited. Feel free to overachieve and exceed it. But you have to reach the overall goal while also spending at least to the dollar amount that you will list with each individual MWBE firm that will help make up the goal. So in effect, it's a dual part thing. Those amounts for each MWBE will also be written into the contract. Moving on to our next slide. What is this a picture of? Powderhorn. Second one. You're on a roll today, sir. What's your name? Andy. Andy, is that your real name or the name you're using in case law enforcement official? Okay, that's the second choice. Good. The powderhorn is the most important piece in shooting a flintlock rifle. It not only holds your gunpowder, but it keeps it dry. Wet gunpowder does not ignite, which makes your rifle a fancy club. This led to the phrase, keep your gunpowder dry, which typically in modern use means ready to be prepared. To be prepared to achieve the program goal, you have to know the most important piece, what counts or does not count for achieving the goal. And we're not going to be able to do that psychically because my wife states my target is too small. So this slide lists the spend that will be counted toward the goal. In the past, we've only counted spend with MWBEs that are prime consultants or sub to the prime. Now we will count spend through third-tier subs. We will now also count supplies, equipment, services, etc., obtained from a city-certified MWBE that we typically did not previously list in the contract. MWBE firm does not need to be from a group found to have a disparity in our disparity study for the spend account toward the goal. And we're going to cover those groups a little bit later. But naturally, we're not going to count all of the contract spend toward the goal. This slide lists spends that will not count, such as supplies, while it will be counted, will only be counted at 60%, not 100%. Items purchased or leased by a sub from a prime will not count. And as the third bullet point states, if your firm is an MWBE that is a prime on a contract, we will no longer automatically count all spend with you toward a goal. We will be looking at what composes that spend. So for example, if you have majority subs on your contract and you're an MWBE prime, the spend that the majority sub has as part of that contract is not going to count toward the goal. The next slide lists acceptable reasons for replacing the sub. None of this should be new to you. These are the reasons we have always been using. Just as we have been doing, primes cannot add or remove subs without our approval. But there is a change to that process. Going forward, the city's Office of Diversity and Inclusion, ODI, will now be included in the review of the change request and in the approval process. There is also now an official form that will be used to request a change. So previously, you emailed our project manager and asked them, and you didn't know it, but the request came to me, and then it would go to my boss, and then it would go to the director. But now we're implementing a form that will be completed, and it will tell you where to send that form. Moving on to the next slide. Another question. This is a replica of a room that was built for a very specific purpose. Any guesses as to what this room was used for? See a smile? I see, oh yes. Correct. That is a replica mission control used for the Apollo missions. When NASA first opened mission control, they had an open house for reporters. And the reporters started asking each person what their job was. And the reporters were getting irritated because every time they received a reply, the reply was, my job is to help put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. So one reporter sees a janitor and he thinks, there's no way I'm going to get that answer from this guy. So he asked the janitor, and the janitor replied, my job is to help put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. The reporter replied, you're not an engineer. That is not your job. And the janitor replied, I clean the rooms to remove the dirt so the dirt does not get into the machines. So the machines keep working so we can put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. My job is to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. Like NASA at that time, right now, we all have the same job, which is to understand these changes and to communicate them to each other. We need to communicate them to you, and you need to communicate them back to us in the proposals that we receive. And we do not have until the end of the decade to figure this out. We have about 2 weeks, because in 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to resume issuing RFPs again. I'm going to give you a little time to go to the website. You'll see later and look at the documents, see what questions you have, submit your questions to us so that we're all prepared when the new RFPs start coming out. As part of understanding the changes, now that we have a formalized program, we need to discuss what happens if not meet the contractual goal amounts. You know, that unpleasant thing. This slide states the potential actions that might be taken if a prime consultant does not meet the program goal. And what I can emphasize the words may, might, potential. No one will hear them. I can tell you that we really I want to go down the path of potential. And I understand that you have to ignore that I stated them. I've been a manager for a long time. Sometimes I get asked how many people I fired. I always answer, I've never fired anybody. You know, that old cliche, they fired themselves. Expectations were explained. In this case, we've agreed on a contract. Conversations were held when expectations were not being met. For these contracts, there's going to be periodic meetings with the PM, possibly also with our Office of Diversity Inclusion, to review progress toward the goals. A performance improvement plan will be put into place. We tell people in my tomahawk throwing group that our prized possession is annual release. Of course, the head was lost and had to be replaced a few times. The handle broke, had to be replaced several times, but we still say it was Daniel Boone's tomahawk. But no, we don't really have Daniel Boone's tomahawk. That is actually a picture of my teaching tomahawk. Might we say that this happened to that mythical Daniel Boone tomahawk? Change over time. Our program is evolving and will change. Just like that tomahawk, pieces will be replaced, but it will still function substantially the same. This also applies to forms for the program that we are about to cover. What we have on the website may change. It may even change, or some of them may change before we do our RFPs in a few weeks. they're still going to be substantially the same form. You're going to be providing substantially the same information. So I'm asking that you go to the website and start looking at them after this meeting and over the next few weeks. We will keep the most current version on that website. We place draft of our RFP documents and the forms on the public service facing website at the location shown on this slide. They are under the heading WBE RFP documents because, unlike you consultants, I'm not very creative, and that's the best name I could come up with. To go over these forms, I'm not going to try to slug through every field on every form and explain that to you. One thing, it might take hours. We're going to hit the highlights, however, today. The major city departments are working together to eventually standardize the RFP document, the forms, and the names of the form. Be less confusing to companies that bid across multiple departments. But that is still a work in progress. One huge change associated with the program, as we move from that voluntary part where you just told us the percentages you were going to use companies for. So one huge change is you'll now need to document your proposed spend plan to meet the goal with your proposal submission. Two forms are used to do this with. The form public service is calling B11 is your utilization plan. It must be submitted with each proposal. Please, this is a very important part. Or the proposal will be deemed non-responsive and ineligible for contract award. So if you're a prime and you don't submit a B11, we will toss it out. Not get a chance to resubmit that again. If B11 shows you met the goal, we only need B11. We don't need another form. If B11 shows you did not meet the goal, then we will need the form public services calling B12, which is the good faith effort form. It is, as a reminder, it's only submitted if your B11 form does not show that you met the goal. Section 7 of the special provision document that I mentioned states what I'm about to cover. Form B11, utilization plan, tells us how you will meet the contract goal. Form 11 consists of two parts. Page 1 is part 1. Pages 2 and 3 are part 2. One copy of page 1 is submitted with each proposal. It states each MWBE form that will be used to achieve the goal and how they will be used and the percentage of the contract they will receive. Pages 2 and 3 provide detail on each firm that will be used to achieve the goal. One set of pages 2 and 3 is submitted for each firm that is being used. And only one section of page 3, either the sub-consultant or the supplier section, is completed per firm, depending upon the function the firm is going to provide for that contract. So, now we get to see if you were paying attention. If 5 companies will be used to achieve the goal, one copy of page 1 is submitted, along with how many sets of pages 2 and 3? 5. 5, yes. That was just a sneaky way of making sure you were still awake. Page B11 will be uploaded as a separate PDF in the Bonfire and will not count toward the RFP page limitation. Section 8 of the special provision is going to cover what I'm about to tell you now on Form B12. B12 is the good faith effort form, and it is 9 pages long. So we are only going to display 1 page today as an example. And as a reminder, Form B12 is only submitted. Your Form B11 showed that you're not going to be able to meet the goal. So it is our hope you never, ever have to submit it. The form has 7 criteria totaling 100 points. The number of points for each criterion is listed on the form, along with what you have to do to earn those points to show that you made a good faith effort for that. There's space under that to document what you did. We do not score this form. Our Office of Diversity and Inclusion scores this form. So you send your proposals in and we immediately ship this information off to them. A score of 80 or more is considered to have demonstrated that a good faith effort was made. Proposals scoring 80 or more points, even if they didn't say that they met the goal on Form B11, still eligible to be considered a contractor. If needed, like Form B11, this will be uploaded in the bonfire as a separate PDF and will not count against the page limit. So let's see if they're still awake. Raise your hand if you can complete the following. Flash in the... Yes. And anyone else want to say 10? He wins again, Tierra. You can pick another random victim and give them to us. Now I'm beginning to feel sorry for the rest of the crowd. What time do you guys usually wake up? 10, 10:30? Today's flash in the pan typically means a brief success, not repeated. But in flintlock times, it meant your priming powder ignited or flashed, like the picture shows. But it did not ignite the gunpowder in the barrel, so you did not get off a shot, which could be very, very bad for you. Form B14 is mentioned in Section 11 of the special provision. It is used to request to add or replace an MWBE on the contract. That's the new form that I told you about that we're going to be using. Need to request a change. Form B13 is included with the draft documents that we are putting on the website, but it is not covered in the special provision document. This is actually a change to city code since it applies to our MWBE program. I'm including it in this part of the presentation. You will find it covered in the revised RFP document because the incentive request will apply to all RFPs, not just those RFPs with an MWBE goal. For the incentive request, city certified MWBE firms that submit a proposal as a prime, not as a sub, and include Form B13 with their proposal, and are certified as ODI, by ODI, as being owned by African Americans, Hispanic Americans, or Caucasian females, because these are the groups found to have a disparity in special services contracts in our 2019 disparity study, and are approved by ODI for the credits, we'll have their evaluation committee score increased by 5% maximum evaluation. Since public service does a 100-point maximum, a firm will receive 5 additional points if eligible for this credit. The last thing that we're going to cover today concerning the MBE WBE program and associated forms is how contracts will be awarded. This is covered in Section 9 of the special provision document, and it's summarized in this slide. The major differences compared to RFPs without program goals are the incentive credit is applied to evaluation committee scores. I think you can understand could change who was the highest rated proposal. Forms B11 and B12, the good faith effort form, come into play to determine if the offeror met the goal or made a good faith effort to meet it. The most frequently asked question I get at this point is what happens if the highest scored company did not meet the goal for the RFP? The answer is the highest scored company can still be awarded, even though they didn't meet the goal, if ODI approves their good faith effort, which means their form received, their B12 form, received a score of at least how many points? 80. Tierra, you can randomly pick someone that has not already won a cookie. Yes, 80 or more. And there is an exception to that. Sometimes ODI may look it over and say, you know what? They tried to make a good faith effort, but unusual circumstances that they have documented kept them from getting the 80 points. So if ODI makes that determination, that proposal can still be eligible for awarded contract. Coming up is a picture of my flintlock rifle. Maybe. Did I skip a page? There it is. My rifle's name is Curtis. I don't think the city would like me to explain in front of this group why my rifle's name is Curtis. Does anyone in the room know the phrase associated with flintlock rifles that is still in use today that means the whole thing or everything? Oh, that is so close. Yeah, Tierra, she gets a cookie, and he gets a cookie, which is somebody different. Yes. Phrase is lock, stock, and barrel. Why they ignore the ramrod, I don't know, but without the ramrod, nothing happens. While we are together, I also want to cover changes made to our base RFP template, so you know about all of the changes and are not surprised when you start taking a look at it. And it is also located on that website that we gave you. So today, you're going to get the whole lock, stock, and barrel when it comes to our changes. As previously mentioned, our base RFP template will be used for RFPs with and without program goals. There have been a lot of changes made to it. Things have been moved around, but we were trying to eliminate duplicated information because there was a lot of duplicated information, and to group like items together and to clarify. So it's that communication thing again, trying to clarify. But some changes were made to comply with city code or to provide additional information we would like to receive. So today we're going to concentrate on the major changes. One of the evaluation categories on the public service RFP is location of the lead offer. This side of the group, you're over. And the public service evaluation criteria, a lead offer located within the city is worth how many points? Any other guesses? 10 is correct. I just wanted to see what anybody else might say. Okay, 10. City code is also changed, adding significantly the definition of a local business, the requirements of which are displayed on this slide. For those of you that would like to look this up, because you prefer to get the information from the horse's mouth instead of the other end, go to 329.01 AA and WBE. Be considered a local offer and receive the full 10 points. You must meet all 6 of these requirements. If you are in the city, do not meet all 6, you will receive 7 points, the same as a business located within Franklin County, but outside of the city limits. I didn't have this in my speaking notes, but as a reminder, or as a statement, I guess, if you don't submit this form, you're going to get 1. I'm going to guess where you're located or how you qualify. We are removing the uncertainty we've had in assigning these points in the past too. A location of lead offer form has been added to the RFP document right after the proposal signature form. Offerers will check the box of their status and sign, certifying that they do meet the criteria that they checked box. This form will not count against the page limit. I keep saying page. Public service RFP page limits will no longer necessarily be 20 pages. Many public service RFPs will now have 12 and 15 pages. The font size will remain 12, but now the font size you want to. We are requesting additional information on the firms that comprise the project. There is actually a lot of information we need to know after we receive your proposals. Websites we have to check, and information we need to provide for our legislation. Even though this is information you already have and know, we've not been requesting it, but going forward, we're going to. Providing this information will help prevent mistakes that could disqualify a company from award consideration. And I was going to say all of us do not want that to happen, but actually I can imagine some of your competitors would not mind if it happened to you. Another problem area for us is verifying pre-qualifications, especially ODOT pre-qualifications. Offerers will typically tell us their team meets the pre-qualification. They don't tell us which member of the team meets the It not only takes time to research this, but the ODOT website is one that's not always the most up-to-date. So we now want a table populated showing this information along with backup documentation from ODOT. This information will be uploaded into Bonfire as a PDF and will not count against the page limit. The same applies if we ask for pre-qualification for qualifications other than ODOT, which we don't usually ask for, but if we do, what I want to table was the show. Moving on to evaluation criteria, city code no longer requires us to have an evaluation, an environmental evaluation factor if we don't think it. So this category may not always be on future public service RFPs. The rest of the categories that we've had will remain. At this point, nothing has been added. You may find that the points assigned to categories will change, especially as we go back and forth between a 12 and a 15-page RFP. It's going to depend upon the type of project that we classify that. The next slide lists the major changes to the contract template. I do not think anything has changed that caused you a lot of heartburn, but please review the contract template. It's part of the RFP document that we have posted on the website. Another thing is reaching the slide means we are almost through. That means we're almost to my favorite slide. One I always look forward to seeing, which is the last one. I'm going to tell you one last story today. There was a company that made widgets. This was before widgets actually meant something. Widget at that time meant an imaginary product. Every widget was perfect and the company made lots of money. Then one day the impossible happened. They made a bad widget, but nobody was concerned because the company made a lot of money. One bad widget wasn't going to hurt them. One bad widget turned to 10%. Now they started to become concerned. And they started looking for someone that could fix the widget making machine. Many companies came out, none could fix it. The 10% became 20%, then 40%, and finally 50%. Now they were panicking because now they were losing so much money they were about to go out of business. But they found one last repair company to try. The repairman, he came in and he looked at this, and he looked at the machine and he nodded his head, took out a screwdriver, and he turned one screw on the machine, 1/4 turn. And suddenly every widget was perfect. Within 15 minutes of arriving, he was ready to leave. The company was very grateful and told him to send the bill and they would pay it no matter what it cost. And as you consultants know, that was a mistake. The bill arrived several days later. It was for $10,000. The company calls the repairman and says, Why so high? You were only here 15 minutes. You turned one screw, 1/4 of a turn. We do not pay this. We need you to itemize the bill. Later, the company received a new invoice. It's dated, turning one screw, 1/4 turn, $1. Knowing one screw to turn, $9,999. So I have two things to say about this story. Number one, this is the most important thing I want you to take away about that story. Do not ever use that against us if we question your invoices. Number two, probably have your favorite PM or administrator ask questions of. Please do not do that for these changes. They are also just learning about the changes. We haven't even had the meeting to roll the program out to them yet. For once, at least for these type of questions, I am finally able to say, I am the horse's mouth. Submit your questions to the capital project's email address. Know they will be answered correctly. They're going to come to me or they're going to go to Andrea. So now, I'll let you know, I actually reserved the room until 11:30. So if you have any questions. No, everything's either not crystal clear. Well, apparently it's either crystal clear as mud. No questions. Yes, sir. No, you do not have any more cookies.
Published
They do. They actually,
Can you repeat the question so that?
the question was, will ODI have a list of pre-qualified companies on a website? Yes, they do. And you will see the website and the documents that we have posted on our public service website for you to look at. The ODI website and who to contact at ODI if you have questions about any companies that you need to contact or anything related to the program that you want to ask them is on those pages.
Services.
Yes. Yes, because the state, as he was saying, the question was, does it include what services they're certified for? The answer is yes. As ODI certifies a company, they actually certify them for specific types of services that they can deliver. Any other questions? Yes.
There's a lot of extra. Want to do more. So I need to know how to estimate it.
So the question was, have we estimated the amount of time it would take consultants to complete all of the forms that are now needed? And the answer to that is no. Not that I'm aware. No one at ODI, no one at any of the other city departments have told me that they have tried to take the time to estimate it. One of the reasons for that is probably because we just received the forms from ODI recently. Another reason would be to us, the forms would make perfect sense. And so then when they don't, you're going to contact who? Or you can contact the capital project, ODI or the capital project. Other questions? Yes.
Lists that the city has. Federally funded. And so will the city continue? The DBE.
City. So the question relates to DBEs, and I want to rephrase, does the city accept DBEs from ODI? Because the answer is, we do not. That may speed up their certification, WBI to become city certified WBE companies. But the companies we use are companies that are certified by ODI as MWBEs. So if you look at an ODOT list and you see a DBE, they may also be certified by the city, but they may not. But you need to check ODI site. You need to contact us to ask.
But my understanding. Site that
Feds. Okay, so if it's a federally funded project, it actually does not covered by the city's WBE. Only what we call our city-funded projects. If it's a blended fund, which a federal project, we usually have to contribute funding to. If it's a blended fund, the ones that public service does almost always has a DBE associated by ODOT. So when that happens, we are actually following the ODOT program and not the city program. See if we can confuse you any more than we already have. Yes, so for that, then we actually in the city and public service, we don't have anything to do with that program whatsoever. The forms get submitted to ODOT. We don't see the form. ODOT approves your plan, and we hear from ODOT what the approved goal is and the companies that are going to be participating. Yes, if it is a federally funded one, then there will be a different format in our proposal, and it will state what the DP is, and you will not see an MWBE.
presumably be the same.
Correct. They are, yes, they are totally different. We don't do very many of them. For the most part, we try to get all of our funding in the construction part instead of the RFP. But on occasion, we do issue. Other questions? Once?
We have a question from online, unless somebody else has some.
Okay.
So, the question from online says, in April, Dunn's, I don't know. Numbers.
Dunn's number?
Required for federal contracts. It's stated on the slide that we must provide part of the team's info.
The polar maps?
Yes, that's true. And it just, in.
The purpose of asking those numbers is for us to be able to go on the federal website and see if you are eligible to be in a contract. Because if you are listed as the bar, we cannot award a contract to you. And we can't use the sub if the sub is listed as a bar. So we will be asking on our forms whatever numbers the federal government is requiring that you provide. Because those are the numbers that we go onto their website and look. And it is amazing how many companies are very similarly named. That's why we're asking for the number. We want to verify that we're actually looking at you before we toss you out because somebody else is the bar. Any other questions on the web, John? All right, well, thanks for coming, and we'll be around if you need to ask any questions in the future. Oh, thank you. That's my midnight show. Come back here, have a seat. If the room's dark and no one's here, don't worry, just wait. Email me later on, let me know how long you waited. Have we ended the webcast?
Yeah.